and he would be pro- starting his presentation, and he would provide the overview of the stimulus package which is announced by the government for MSMEs. So over to you, sir. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Ira, and thank you very much, Vicky, for giving us this platform. I'm Himanshu Srivastav, and I would be speaking broadly about the key features of economic stimulus. Now, I have exercised some discretion, and based on my, judgment, I have included and excluded certain sections which I think would be relevant for the group. So in case there is something which I may not have covered because the economic stimulus was quite comprehensive and elaborate, that part can be taken up in the Q&A. So, and further, since I'm not so much Atmanirbhar, I would rely on Aman to do the slides for me. Thank you very much. So basically, ladies and gentlemen, we all know coronavirus pandemic and the nationwide lockdown has given us a very severe blow. Entire economy is suffering, and it's solely not just one company, but the entire ecosystem and other parts which is totally distressed because of impact of COVID-19. In fact, I was reading and I read a survey by CNBC Global CFO Council, which says that around 40% of companies that are already suffering from or expectedly their supply chain management, it will take around 3 to 6 months to get back on track, and the business will be normalized in at least 6 months. So we all know that major impact is primarily on the manufacturing and logistics. And as per, again, the reports, 1 out of top manufacturing companies rely on China and supply from China. And everything is in lockdown and factories still not operating. Traveling is restricted. So globally, all this is similar to what we had witnessed during the 2008 recession. And since this pandemic has impacted almost all the countries, it's imperative to find alternative routes. And this is where, while on one end, because of social distancing and infections or sickness, health-related restrictions, companies are finding it very hard to load and unload material. On the other hand, consumers are becoming very cautious about purchasing non-essential items due to fear of virus. So this is all making a huge impact on the economy. So in a bid to kind of revive the economy, Prime Minister Modi made an announcement, and Modi government announced a stimulus package of 20 trillion or 20 lakh crore, which is, named as Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan, or in simple English, we call it Self-Reliant Mission. So details of this economic package, as announced by the Finance Minister, in several tranches, and various tranches focus on different elements. I would, as I mentioned in the beginning, I would cover some of them, but in a nutshell, I would say that every crisis in the past has offered the opportunity to improve operational efficiency, resilience of the company. Similarly, once this all ends, so the business continuity or effective usage of policies to all our advantage, and similarly at the same time stress testing your supply chain would build and sustain organization. So the first, the slide which is appearing, the major announcement is regard to definition of MSME. So this has been ongoing for a lot of years now, and government has finally put the controversy to the rest. The government has now finalized or given, done away with the age-old distinction between manufacturing SME and service SMEs, and they have made it one concept, and in fact have widened it, divided into micro, small, and medium enterprises. For example, all enterprises with investment less than 10 million or turnover of less than 50 million will be qualified for micro enterprises. The same for small enterprises, 100 million as investment and 500 million as turnover, and similarly 200 million and 1000 million. So whatever is investment multiplied by 5 is the turnover limit. They would categorize, be qualified to be called as a micro, small, and medium enterprises. So the principle of turnover along with investment definition is a move to further ease doing business in India, and it would lead to inclusion of more units in the MSME definition. So this would really help because somewhere we have witnessed that a lot of MSME would be constraining themselves as to not expand purely because of fear of disqualification as MSME, and whatever benefits they were otherwise qualified to would have to be given away, or they no longer be able to avail them. So government has realized this, and therefore they have expanded the definition of MSME. So now I will go to the specific measure. Next slide, Aman, please. Yes, there are certain specific measures which are announced by the government, and government has taken several initiatives to help MSMEs fight against liquidity crunch through extension of emergency credit line from banks and non-banking financial companies. In fact, it's a two-way benefit scheme. One, it will help the distressed sector which are hit hard by COVID-19 in terms of liquidity. Also, it will help boost the bottom lines and of banks and non-banking financial companies. So it's a mutual win-win both for the lending as well as borrowing sector. And as announced by the finance minister, the government will offer a loan worth 3 trillion as collateral free automatic loan to MSME sector with outstanding of about up to 20% of the outstanding borrowings. For example, borrowers with up to 25 crores outstanding credit turnover of 1 billion rupee will be able to avail these borrowings. And this loan will be offered for a tenure of 4 years with a 12-month moratorium period. So it's a significant relaxation to MSME to boost their liquidity. Another advantage is that eligible enterprises do not have to furnish any collateral to avail this loan. So the government will provide complete credit guarantee cover to lenders on principal and interest amount. But the sad part is that all this is limited only till 31st of October this year, beyond which maybe there is an extension. The another important announcement was that support through equity infusion, by way of establishing a $100 billion fund, which if you take up all the combined limits about up to 500 billion through funds of fund. So in MSME declared NPAs or under financial distress will be eligible for equity support from the financial institutions also. So in my view, it's important to infuse equity capital into SME because too much debt distorts capital investments and creates a debt trap. And maybe debt alone will not lead to increased investment. So this step of equity infusion is a step in the right direction. Then we have something called, some new principle or coin word is vocal for local, which is in the local tendering norms, the new tendering norms. The COVID-19 impacts have brought highlights over the local supply chain. So India, to a large extent, been able to sustain the worst impact of pandemic due to local supply chain. So, it's important that we should strengthen the local production and local manufacturing. So this announcement that tenders for government procurement will be only open to local companies and not for the global companies. These tenders from government are worth up to 200 crores or 2 billion rupee, which would be barring global procurement tender, is aimed at boosting business of Indian MSMEs and for creation of level playing field for MSME and cut out the unfair competition or uneven competition, due to the foreign companies. And, as we all know that the public sector enterprises will be releasing all pending MSME payments within 45 days to help them survive liquidity crunch. So all this is expected. There'll be a spillover effect on sectors, maybe, which is worst affected, for example, automobile. So I personally see that sales are expected to gain over time because in my view, now there would be a surge in personal vehicle post COVID-19 scenario, just to people will be wary of sharing cabs with strangers. So they could be in going term near future can be good demand for various sectors. Other sectors, in my view, which would gain are education, digital space, television, radio, and some other which I have covered in my slides. Next, please. So, I've already spoken about specific impact of these measures. So maybe we can skip this slide also. Please go to the next slide. Yeah. So then there are certain important labor reforms. So the government has relaxed certain, let's say statutory EPF contribution norms have been relaxed. So in order to allow more take-home salary for employees, the EPF contribution of employers and employees has been reduced to 10%, which was earlier 12%. Further, government is also disbursing and shall continue to disburse EPF contribution to both the employer and employee 12 or 10% each for total period from past 3 months and for the next 3 months until August. For organization employing 90%, if their workforce of 90% is drawing less than 15,000 per month. So currently the minimum wage clause is applicable was only to 30% of workers. So this will, the EPF contribution reduction for employees for another 3 months. For workers which were not covered by government support under Prime Minister Grameen Kalyan package. And this session will definitely help middle class employees, will provide liquidity to workers and MSME and businesses also. Further, government has proposed to ensure certain timely and minimum payment of wages to all workers. To promote formalization, the code also suggests giving appointment letters to all workers, introduction of something as national floor wage to bring uniformity between, various disparities existed between state to state. So this probably would give a lot of clarity to all the business houses or businessmen, entrepreneurs, foreign investors while they deal with the laborers in India. And, there are certain other provisions such as mandatory ESI coverage in hazardous and, even government has allowed voluntary coverage for ESI in case of non-eligible entities. So all this is leading to more organized, deployment of laborers in times to come. Next slide. There are certain relaxation under Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code 2006. I thought I'll include it because a lot of MSME will be on the both end of the spectrum, as in there will be some MSME which would be unable to pay because of various pandemic impacts to their, let's say to their suppliers. So there is a protection against in the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code that the minimum threshold, which was earlier 100,000 rupees, has been extended or increased to 1 crore rupees. So that probably would insulate a lot of MSME to be proceeded against under the Insolvency and Bankruptcy norms. It will be difficult to go to, for bankruptcy procedures. I'm sure, in fact, I was, just reading that there was around 14,000 cases of nearly 50 billion rupee, which were withdrawn because of this amendment. So it's a huge, lifesaver for a lot of MSMEs. But at the same end, MSMEs whose payments are stuck will be facing the negative impact of this amendment. There is another provision of special insolvency resolution process for MSME. I'm sure government would be mindful of the fact that this pandemic was something which could not have been anticipated during the formulation of business plan. And exclusion of COVID-19 related debt from the definition of default under the code is also going to trigger, less number of insolvencies. Next, please. So, then there are certain special focus on reforms. I prepared the slide which are self-explanatory, but probably I would go into, one by one details. So next slide, please. So there is a special focus on, these sectors. In fact, in the stimulus package, there were only 8. I, included a 9th one also. The reason for which, or the next slide, is coal, mineral, defense, airport, MRO, power distribution companies, space. There is the error in the bracket, and atomic energy. And there are something called champion sectors also. Maybe we can go to the next slide. Next slide, please. Yeah. So in coal, government is keen on imposing self-reliance in the coal sector, enhance private sector participation, simplification of procedure. A lot of procedures have been simplified. Ease of doing business is being talked about. Entry norms. In my view, there are certain sectors which have been touched upon by the stimulus package were totally, sacred. It was impossible to kind of introduce any kind of reforms in these sectors because there's so much, around this sector, both in terms of lobbying, politics. But the government has really in a very timely manner, has, successfully managed to get consensus of liberalization these particular sectors such as coal and minerals. Next slide, please. Then, of course, we are expecting a major boost in both forward and backward integration in terms of industry which are dependent on defense. So what we observed, and I have also documented this, a lot of companies, foreign companies, were wary of the fact related to losing their IPRs, and confidentiality issues were very, very high on the agenda if they were to be the minority partner. Since now the FDI limit has been increased to 74%, which technically means that they run the show and they control all the special resolutions also, 2/3 majority. So this would probably help localize a lot of production related to defense, and would also help government to realize its Make in India vision. And if, of course, these spares or weapons or certain indigenous components are localized and domestic industry is kind of developed, there is certainly going to be a boom for employment, more avenues for education, training of people, and certainly we can reduce the dependence of on imports, because India is a large budgetary allocation goes towards import of weapons. So with that, probably we will be able to address that concern as well. Next. Then, of course, by airport and civil aviation, I used to always wonder why flights can't go directly from one place to the other. Primarily, now I understand because of airspace was restricted, but then government also realized it, and they would be probably introducing some changes which will make it more efficient. And overall, let's say 12 airports, the names have been mentioned on the slide. I kind of researched it. It was not very evident. 12 airports, which the privatization, which has led to nearly 13,000 crores revenue or investment by the private players, is again a good kind of catalyst to boost private players' participation in these sectors. And all these airports, if they are developed, it would really further ease traffic control as well as more urbanization. If there is more urbanization, I'm sure there would be more opportunity for employment and livelihood around these towns, and maybe in near future these tier 2 cities will grow up to become metropolitan cities like Delhi, Mumbai, Chennai, etc. Next part. Certain specific sectors, and of course, to promote investment, government has said that they would fast track all the foreign investment. They would create special cell within the ministry to clear the investors' projects. Government has said that we would introduce attractiveness ranking for state. I think it's very difficult to kind of rank states based on parameter. It could be objective and could lead to dispute, but maybe it leads to a good, healthy competition amongst the state to improve the infrastructure. Let's see how it goes. Certain promotional schemes have also been launched for, champion sectors. Solar PV, we all have to understand that cell battery storage as well as solar power is probably the next big thing. Solar Alliance was something Mr. Modi was very keen. And a further dedicated fund has been created for, champion sectors. So this was the 9th part which I was mentioning, that just I was reading just before the lockdown, the government had identified these 12 champion service sectors for promoting and realizing their potential. And India really needs to have leading service providers. And for example, I see legal services here, I see financial services. So all these services sector will get a boost under this policy of champion sector. Next, please. There are reliefs for real estate. There are relief for infrastructure also, which is there for everyone to read. Force majeure, which is a major relaxation for the real estate sector, has been notified for real estate sector. Registration completion deadlines have been further extended by 6 months. Statutory compliances have been relaxed. Similarly, on industrial infrastructure, government has said that they will rank industrial parks. I was surprised to see that there are more than 3,000 industrial parks in India. But when you have to guide your client as to, the best location in India, there was hardly anything. So this GIS mapping would certainly help, not just foreign investor, but even a local MSME who want to expand further or go closer to the port or to the source of raw material or to the customer. This ranking would probably help and bring transparency in the overall system. Next slide, please. Then there were certain amendments in the corporate law. I'm sure you must have been aware of these. So major violations have been decriminalized. Earlier there was, penalties and imprisonment. So government has taken steps to decriminalize the non-compliances. There are relaxation for doing board meetings and shareholder meetings, which is a very proactive step. In fact, this conference or webinar, we are even doing board meetings now through Zoom and other IT platforms. No additional fee would be charged for delayed filing up to September 30th. A very good measure, I would say. CSR have funds for COVID-19. Many companies, as we always see, are always in dilemma where to contribute. So COVID-19 is the best, I would say, avenue for them to release their CSR funds, and that gives them some benefit in terms of compliances as well. And I think in case of subsidiaries of foreign companies, this last relaxation of minimum residency of 182 days, a lot of foreign expat had to rush out of India because of lockdown. Since this February, everything started unfolding, and they probably would be categorized as non-compliant. But due to this amendment, they would not be treated as it would not be treated as a violation. So it's a big boost. Next slide, please. And some relief for contractors for government. Extension of period and eligibility by 6 months would certainly help these contracting agencies to survive and be able to continue or complete their projects. Next slide, please. So with that, I would hand over to my one of our most able speaker on indirect taxation, Mr. Sandeep Gupta. If you have any questions from me, please do advise me in the end of the slide. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Mr. Sandeep Gupta, partner, Indirect Tax, ASC and Associates LLP. Sir, so you can start the presentation, and he'll present the synopsis of due date of indirect tax compliances, and he'll give his insights on changes impacting the MSMEs. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Veera. Very good afternoon, friends. What the entire world is going through is really unprecedented. I mean, nothing what has been experienced historically in the past could have ever been, prepared any country, any person, any leader, global leader for that matter, as to how to deal with that situation. To talk about the Indian government, yes, it is a Herculean task. It continues to be a Herculean task, but various measures are being taken to the best of their ability, I am sure, to help out the affected sectors, to help out the affected MSMEs, to help out the various migrant laborers. And in that regard, various stimulus measures, which Himanshu has just explained to you, which total up to a staggering 20 trillion rupees, various tax measures in terms of providing them relaxations on the compliances side, in terms of processes, in terms of certain legal complications, those have been given. So I will now talk about the various relaxation or reliefs which have been provided to the public at large, I mean, essentially taxpayers, through the GST and the custom related relaxations. Next slide, please. Talking, yeah, talking first about the relaxation in the due date. So various compliances fall due under each of the legislation, and GST is no separate animal from the rest of the statutes. So what the government primarily did way back in as soon as the pandemic began around the last 10 days of March, was to extend the due date for filing the monthly returns of GSTR 3Bs and GSTR 1s. So interestingly, what they did was that while they extended the due date of GSTR 1, they relaxed actually the due date for GSTR 1 to 30th of June. They relaxed the GSTR 3B filing dates, which actually is linked to the tax payment dates on the basis of the categorization of taxpayers. To my mind, it seemed not a very necessary thing to do, but as the powers that we decide, they did it. So what they essentially did was to break up the taxpayers into three categories: people up to 1.5 crores of aggregate turnover, taxpayers between 1.5 to 5 crores of turnover, and those falling above the 5 crore bracket. So while a substantial relief was given to the taxpayers falling below 5 crores tax bracket, that there were staggered dates of filing permitted to those taxpayers in terms of last week of June or early first week of July, based on the month of February, March, or April. They were given complete waiver from the late fee and penalty also. What the government did for the taxpayers having an aggregate turnover of more than 5 crores was that they gave them a relaxation from payment of taxes by only 15 days. So which means any return, or let's say take the case of the March return, which was falling due on 20th of April, the timeline was given that you may relax your payment only from 15 days from 20th of April, which is essentially 5th of May. If within 15 days you file your return and you pay your taxes, because both are go together, you cannot file your return without paying your taxes, then the government said that there will be no levy of interest or late fee or penalty. There was a complete waiver. But then they went a step forward. They said if you are not able to file within 15 days of the original due date, but you file it before 24th of June 2020, then while the late fee and penalty would be waived off, the interest would be levied on the tax not so paid at the reduced rate of 9%. So, this was a sort of a relaxation, a partial relaxation only in terms of interest relief to larger taxpayers greater than 5 crores of turnover. And then the government said, if you are still not able to file by 24th of June, then from 25th of June onwards, the interest will revert to the original interest rate of 18% or 24%, depending on the case, and late fee and penalty would also be levied. To my mind, it's a bit harsh. Representations, I'm sure FICCI has also sent, and other trade chambers have also been sending. But an unnecessary complication was brought about. But having said that, complication or no complication, these are the position of law which stands as on date for filing of the monthly return under GST. In the subsequent slides, a very detailed time chart has been built up for various key compliances under GST from February till September of 2020, and that we'll just quickly run through. And I'm sure FICCI would be sharing a copy of this presentation with everybody, so you can always go through it at your leisure. The other thing which the government did, which was very, very necessary, was in terms of extending the due date of filing the annual return for financial year 2018-2019. This, as you know, was earlier 20th of October or 31st of, it was 31st of December 2019. Then the government had actually raised it till June of 2020, and now it has been extended by a further period of 3 months, and now the annual return can be filed till September of 2020, 30th September 2020. Linked with the annual return filing is also your GST audit. And there the government has also come out with the relaxation that instead, earlier, if you remember, the provision was any taxpayer having an aggregate turnover of more than 2 crores was subjected to GST audit. That limit has been raised to 5 crores for financial year 2018-19. So that's a bit of a relaxation which has been also given. Other than that, considering the lockdown situation, various dates were extended and they were necessary to be extended. One of them was the e-way bill validity. So the government said that whatever e-way bills have been generated up to 24th of March 2020, because the lockdown began on that particular date, the official lockdown. And if this e-way bill is expiring between 20th of March to 15th of April, then the due date for the validity of this e-way bill would be extended automatically till 31st of May 2020, another 5 days, 4 days to go. Now, this was required because if you remember in the initial lockdown period, there was a complete halt of the transportation, the logistics arrangement. So the taxpayers were actually facing a lot of difficulties. How do you, extend the e-way bills, because there are certain procedures under which you can extend the e-way bills and not generally. Excuse me. So the e-way bills validity problem was solved by the extension, and that helped a lot. Excuse me. The general extension up to 30th of June also came in by virtue of the ordinance, the taxation ordinance, which was passed. And that provided that in case any timeline is falling due between 20th of March till 29th of June, in terms of response to any kind of a notice, submission of replies, all this would get automatically extended up to 30th of June. This is a very significant relaxation under the GST provisions. And then the two big ticket items which the government was planning to implement, the new return system and the e-invoicing system, both have also been deferred till September 2020. Now the proposal is that they will be brought into effect from October 1, 2020. So obviously this gives a lot more time for all the MSMEs to also prepare accordingly, because under the lockdown period, a lot of work has got stuck up. There are a lot of bottlenecks which have happened. So, obviously preparedness has also suffered. Two other things which the government did was extending the period up to 30th of June for letter of undertakings in the case of exporters. So there the government said that in case you are able to file your letter of undertaking for financial year 2021 by on or before 30th of June, you will not be penalized for not filing it as on 1st of April or within the first 1 month of the new financial year. They also said that you can continue to use the old reference number of the previous LUT into the invoices which you are raising in April and May till the time you are able to file your LUT for fiscal year 2021. And the refund application, similarly, they said that whatever was expiring after March 19, 2020, they would automatically be extended up to 30th of June 2020. Next slide, please. In terms of certain procedural relaxations, they have come out with very significant measures in the sense of permitting now the monthly return 3B to be filed through EVC mode, electronic verification code method. As you know, the income tax returns are already filed accordingly. And they also said that nil returns of 3B can be filed through SMS from the registered mobile number of the taxpayers. They also came out with a very significant relaxation to help the liquidity aspect for the MSMEs was in terms of the reconciliation of tax credit, which was earlier restricted to only 10% of the claim of unmatched credit in GSTR 2A. The government said that this restriction will be relaxed till August 2020, which means even if the tax credit is not appearing in your GSTR 2A, you are allowed to take credit of it during these months from February till August, provided you do an end-to-end reconciliation for this period and either reverse the claim or claim additionally based on your 2A in the month of September. So final adjustment will necessarily need to be made in the month of the September return. This is actually going to be extremely beneficial in terms of a cash flow positive situation to the MSMEs. The The debatable aspect of charging interest on the delayed payment of GST, it has always been a bone of contention, whether it was chargeable on the gross tax liability or the net tax liability after set off of the tax credit. The government has come out with the amendment. It has been amended in the statute itself, though it is yet to be notified, and it will be applicable with the retrospective date of July 1, 2017, the beginning of the implementation date of GST, that interest liability will only need to be calculated on the net cash tax liability and not on the gross tax liability. This is a significant move. They have also allowed relaxation in terms of bunching of financial years for filing GST refund applications, because this always used to be extremely cumbersome for the exporters in case there are heavy imports in a particular in the month of February and March, but not correspondingly enough exports in that year. They were not allowed to claim a refund in the subsequent application for the subsequent period. Now the tax periods can be bunched up together across the financial years, and refund can also be claimed. The aggregate turnover threshold for GST audit I have already spoken about. The transfer of cash ledger balance from one head to the other, that functionality has also now been opened up on the GSTN portal. This was decided by the GST Council last year, somewhere in mid of 2019, but due to various difficulties, this could not be done. Fortunately, during these difficult times, now the MSMEs have this option of transferring the excess cash under the head of SGST to either CGST or IGST, or in whichever way. They can do it themselves going on the GSTN portal. The personal hearings have been permitted through the video conferencing route, considering the social distancing norms, and that goes across all the statutes, income tax, GST, customs, you name it and you have it. So that's a very welcome move. They have also said that in considering the lockdown situation, there could be situation of cancellation of contracts or return of goods. So, there would be a issue of credit reversal or claim of credits in that case. So the government said that in case you do not have enough tax liabilities during the subsequent period when the return has taken place, you are entitled to claim a refund. And the same procedures of refund would also apply in terms of the documentation. Coming on to the other relaxations on the customs and the foreign trade policy ones, I mean, the first and foremost, they said customs will start operating 24/7 to give you clearances round the clock. That was a very welcome move considering the pandemic situation. They also said that the aspects of foreign trade policy 2015 to 2020 would get extended generally by a year, subject to specific extensions, some of which are up to December, some of which could be up to September. And they said that all the provisions of the FTP would continue to apply for the financial year 2021 also. In customs, they also made significant developments in terms of going completely paperless. So, even clearances were being permitted through the digital copies of the bill of entries filed by the importers. The approvals on the bill of entries were given electronically. There was no need for filing the complete bunch of hard copies, the entire set of documents. So that was a very welcome move during the complete lockdown situation which happened. Various other relaxation measures they came out with in terms of, doing away with the requirement of providing a bond, because it was becoming very difficult for the taxpayers to, even travel to their bankers to negotiate, to finalize a bond to be submitted to customs authorities where required for clearances. They said a simple undertaking from the importer would be sufficient for a certain period of time. So those kind of relaxations, they came out to ease the transactional aspects or the operational aspects of imports and exports. They also said extended the period, the limitation period for making exports or imports under various advance authorizations or the FTP schemes. There are limitation period within which you need to import or export. So they said anything which is expiring between February till July would be automatically extended by 6 months. So that's a very welcome relaxation. The people, importers and exporters, get a lot more time to fulfill their necessary contractual obligation under the FTP. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Yeah, we will now just talk, give a little time in talking about the various relief measures which the government should consider going forward also. because these are also going to be extremely challenging for the people, not only in these times, but in regular times as well. So first and foremost is the new refund process, which has been laid down by the government. There are certain aspects which are extremely detrimental to the taxpayers. One of them is the requirement of submitting the HSN code or the SAC code for every input tax credit invoice. Now, as you know, most of the MSMEs do not have the data capturing procedures and systems to capture the HSN code for all the inputs, which or the services or the purchases which they keep on doing, whether the purchase of goods or services. But now, while filing the refund application, the entire schedule of HSN code linked to each item of service or goods in each invoice will need to be built up. And that's going to be a Herculean task unless somebody has already built up those systems in the ERP. It's going to be a mammoth clerical task. This, I think, government should reconsider. The second thing which they have done very surreptitiously, I would say they have put in, is that they have capped the turnover to 1.5 times in case of zero rated supply. So they have said that if you are selling something in India for 100 rupees, but the same thing you are exporting abroad for 200 rupees, you will not be given the refund based on the turnover pro rata on 200 value, but only 1.5 times of the Indian domestic sales value, which is 100 rupees. So now the export turnover would not be considered as 200, it would be considered as 150 only. And there the additional condition they have laid down is that if you are not selling in the domestic market, then similar goods in the domestic market will need to be benchmarked. Now this is going to be an extremely difficult situation for exporters unless they are already into the domestic market as well. This is something that the government should consider. Why should an exporter who is able to realize a better price in the export markets and gain more foreign exchange revenue for our country, why should he be penalized as something which the government should relook into? And then there were various restrictions brought in for tax refund, that they said that any tax credit which is not appearing in your 2A will not be allowed to you for a refund. Now, considering the situation of compliances and the level of procedures and accountancy systems which many MSMEs has, I'm not saying all, there are clerical mistakes which do keep on happening in GSTR 2A. Now, you will need to be very, very careful in case you are an exporter or a refund applying person, that your vendors must be 100% compliant. Otherwise, you would be losing not only the tax credit, but also the refund of it. In terms of inverted tax rate structures, they have laid down a further restriction that in case you are a trader, which means you buy goods and you sell goods as it is without providing any value addition, then the refund would not be allowed to you if the tax rate on output supplies is reduced subsequently. So which means all your accumulated stock, you would be left with a high amount of tax credit which you can neither set off nor will you be allowed to claim a refund. I think these are the few things they should be looking into. Then in terms of procedural aspect, there is a tax credit availment limitation given under the Act that any invoice pertaining to a financial year, you can take a credit only till the time of filing the September month of return in the next financial year. I think for 2018-19, the government should relook into this provision and extend the time limit to taking it maybe till June or September this year. And similar is the requirement for extending the timeline for issue of credit notes with respect to financial year 2018 and 19. The other things which I would like to talk about for the recommendations to the government would be, please allow during these times the tax credit on CSR expenses which are incurred in relation to the pandemic at least, and also see if a relaxation can be provided to the taxpayers for not being able to pay to their vendors within 180 days due to the COVID-19 situation. Please do not disallow the tax credit to such taxpayers, at least with a condition that provided they are able to make the payment as soon as the lockdown is opened up or the activity comes on a normal operational plane. I think these measures would go a long way in terms of helping MSMEs with their liquidity as well. And then there is always that aspect of e-way bills. As per the present GSTN systems, if 2 months returns are not filed consecutively, sorry, 6 months of returns are not filed consecutively, then the e-way bills are blocked. Now, no, sorry, 2 months of return not filed and the e-way bills are blocked. So there the government should relook into considering these pandemic situations and the extension in filing of the return that the government is giving, that please do not block the facility of generation of e-way bills due to simply non-filing of returns during this period and considering the extension which has been given by the government. And as a last suggestion, if the government can consider paying the RCM liability may be permitted to be paid out of the accumulated tax credit, that would be a good measure, at least for certain duration of time, is not for perpetuity. Those are the few things I wanted to share with you. And if you could just take us to the next slide, please. Now, this is the complete chart of the due dates under GST, the key due dates. GSTR 1, 3B based on different category of taxpayers I've already covered. Next slide, please. And then there are dates for composition taxpayers in terms of annual returns, for tax deducted at source who are covered under GSTR 7 or TCS for GSTR 8. Next slide, please. And a few things in terms of e-way bills or ITC 04, where the job work goods have to be returned back, and the export by merchant exporters. And this gives you reference of all the relevant notifications also for your ready use. This would be my thoughts on the relaxations on the IDT front. Very happy to take the questions at the end of the session. Over to you now.
Thank you, sir. It was very, very useful. I think very useful on insights on the various developments. So that was quite useful. Thank you. And I think we would further look forward to queries and from the participants in the Q&A session later. Now I would request Mr. Sunil Arora, who is a partner taxation in ASA and Associates LLP. So he will be sharing insights on various tax planning exercises which maybe MSME can consider in this fiscal year. And he would also take us through the due date of direct tax compliances. Over to you, Mr. Sunil Arora.
Thank you, Ira, and thank you, Sandeep. Thank you, Himanshu, for setting the tone for this discussion. Well, friends, from a direct tax perspective, Himanshu had a lot to talk about the stimulus measures which were aimed at the MSME sector. Sandeep had a lot to talk about procedural changes that were suggested on the GST side. Unfortunately, on the direct tax side, there hasn't been much movement, let alone the MSME side. I don't think on any segment there have been any specific movement. Let's look at what happened over the last 2 months on the direct tax side. Number one, I think not many people realized that the finance. Just go back to the last slide, please. Just go to the last slide. We don't need the slide yet. Not many people realized, but very quietly, during the first lockdown 1.0, the Finance Act 2020, which was introduced as a bill on February 1, 2020, that was approved on March 27th. That got accent of the President of India, and that got approved. Now, not many changes beyond what was proposed in the bill, but that got approved. A couple of changes which were more applicable, more relevant to the foreign companies were introduced. A couple of more changes to the residency provisions, but nothing earth-shattering in terms of the difference between the Finance Bill and the Finance Act. So that happened very quietly. And then the government came out with some measures, moving some deadlines here and there and giving some leeway in your TDS payments, so on and so forth. But, there are two aspects to look into this COVID situation. One is the current aspect, what happens during the lockdown due to COVID. And the other aspect is what is the long-term impact, or what we expect as a long-term impact of the COVID situation, and how it impacts the businesses, how it will impact, let's say, the MSME side. The way I look at it is that I'm sure you all know about the e-assessment proceedings by the tax authorities. And I'm just using this as an example. Now, imagine a case where today you are required to present your cases on an e-platform. You really don't talk to the tax officer, on a video conference today. But what you do is you interact through emails, and the assessment could be completed. Now, the way the tax authorities have been perceiving this entire initiative is that They want to make use of excessive, technology. They want to make use of AI. They want to make use of data analytics. I'm sure you would have heard about the project which they initiated about 3-4 years ago, Project Sayog, where they are trying to minimize the mismatch between the transactions that are reported and the transactions that you file with the tax authority. So that is already being done. But in the larger picture, they have always been planning to do or enter into an ecosystem where you could do not just e-assessments, you could do a digital tax audit or a digital assessment. So imagine a case where if your cases are picked up for scrutiny, of course, there's going to be a very developed way that your cases will be picked up for scrutiny, not like today. Imagine a case where you are required to prepare a data bank, a virtual data bank. The tax authorities are going to use their data tools or the audit tools to enter into that data bank, pick up transactions that need to be looked into, conduct the audit, look into the entire documentation on an e-basis, only come back to you if required. Otherwise, they just enter into your system, do the audit and go back. Now, all of this has been in the making, but the way COVID has impacted this whole situation is that everything is being hastened now, given that tax offices were virtually out of operation for more than 1 month. They've barely started with 33% workforce. But given the COVID situation, the government realizes that the sooner they get into a digital platform, the better it is for them. So something which would have taken 5 to 7 years will hardly take, let's say, 2 to 4 years from now. So imagine a case where your statutory auditors come and do the statutory audit by way of just using a digital tool. Imagine a tax officer also doing your tax scrutiny. Look at the courts. The courts have also started doing your day-to-day hearings via video conferencing. Whatever documents you submit are available on the computer right in front of them, and they can take a decision right away. So there's a lot happening. Next slide, please. Can you give me the next slide, please? Yes. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to spend 5 or 7 minutes on the overall slide deck that I have. So what they've done is, this is not much to talk about, but what they've done is they have pushed some deadlines, some critical ones, some not so critical ones. The deadline for the last year, which is already extended deadline to file tax returns for assessment year 1920, the deadline was March 31st. That has been moved by 3 months. But all the other deadlines have been moved considering a scenario where the government believes that the COVID situation or the pandemic situation will be under control. So anything that is falling before, let's say, or around the end of first quarter has really been moved to October or November. It's been given clear the 3 months or 4 months that we sort of lose in this entire situation. They've given a leeway and the deadlines have been moved by another 3 or 4 months. So nothing much to talk about. Next slide, please. Similarly, the Vivad Se Vishwas scheme, the one-time settlement scheme that the government offers, where you can pay a specific amount to the tax officer, which means if you're ready to pay the tax which was originally determined in the assessment, the government says that we will let go any interest and penalties that apply to your case. There was the scheme initially applicable until 31st of March. In the first leg extended to 30th of June, and in the second leg extended up to 31st of December. So this scheme is very much open, and we are talking to a lot of our clients, obviously, who are keen to use the situation to settle all past disputes and who have cash. Obviously, this is a tight liquidity situation, to discuss this part. Tax assessments, those which were time barring on 30th September will get a 3-month extension, and those which were time barring on 31st March 2021, which will get a 6-month extension, obviously, because there is a lot of overload on the system. Next slide, please. Now, what are the other measures? As I said, not many. The tax deduction rates, the TDS rates, have been reduced by 25% for any payments that you make to residents, and these payments are non-salaried. So, for example, a 10% rate becomes a 7.5%, a 2% rate becomes a 1.5%, so on and so forth. and there is a specific time duration. They have been trying to hasten. They've been trying to give out refunds. In the first leg, they released all the tax refunds below an amount of rupees 5 lakhs. That was a good initiative. A lot of people said that, this was my money, and since you've given it back to me, what's the big deal about it? So, but on the TDS part, some people have been asking question that you've reduced the TDS by 25%. Is it enough? And people have there are many views, but the way I look at it is that given that these are testing times and given that the cash flow situation is really, really very tight, the government should have given it a completely new thought on the provision of TDS. Remember, TDS was introduced when the Indian economy was not as synchronized as is it today. So TDS only did not serve a purpose of tax collection. It served the purpose of tax evasion also. Now today, in an environment where all your sales are directly tallied to what you report under GST, is a TDS required in every format, in every manner of payment, in every nature of payment or not, is itself questionable. So we only wish if the government had the vision of completely relooking at the TDS provisions, and possibly completely they could have done away with a lot of TDS provisions that would have been more beneficial to the MSME segment, because every rupee today matters a lot. Next slide, please. The next one. Now, when you talk about some tax planning measures, there are two sides to it. One is when you talk about tax planning, you're talking about tax planning your liquidity situation, number one. And the number two is, what do you do in terms of sort of reorganizing your business? Do you have any options available? So the first leg is really about the improving your liquidity position. We really call them tax financing measures rather than tax planning measures. So the first, I just want to discuss a couple of them. First and the foremost, and the most important part here is that, and this is what we've been discussing with a lot of our clients now, specifically again MSMEs, is that there is a provision under law, under the income tax law, which says that where the taxpayer feels that the effective rate of tax, eventual effective rate of tax, is going to be lower than the TDS, which is supposed to be withheld in your case, you could approach your tax officer and ask for a lower tax withholding certificate. So imagine you are a service company, you're a professional service company. I'll take our example. When people pay us, they withhold a 10% tax, which is now reduced from 10% to 7.5%. But if our effective rate of tax due to COVID or for any other reason goes down even below 7.5%, assuming all our incomes suffer the same rate of tax, if it goes below 7.5%, and if I can make a case and convince the tax officer, I can ask the tax officer to issue a certificate which will say that there should be no tax reduction on my payments, on payments made to me, or let's say a reduced tax reduction of, let's say, between 2 to 4%. Now that is a huge saving in these times, because something which was originally deductible at 10% has come down to 3 or 4%. That obviously is a lot of cash saving to me. Now, in larger contracts, MSMEs, let's say into the power segment, into the infra segment, they are into supplies, they are into consortium contracts, they are into heavy duty, design contracts. Assuming that you partner with a lot of foreign companies, and when you deal with foreign companies and when you deal in consortiums, the consortium tax becomes very complicated. Now, there are situations that arise today whereby these consortiums, because of the COVID situation, you have a lot of people in the consortium who are stuck in India, and that gives rise to problems which are linked to the residency of the consortium. A lot of these foreign companies do end up paying or may end up paying a very high rate of tax. Now, if you're partners with them, you sort of share that tax liability. So in the interest of all, if this is a provision that you would like to sort of explore at this point in time, this is a worthy proposition. So obtaining nil or lower rate withholding taxes. The other sort of tax financing measure that we see is, this has been practically untested, but there is a rule in the Income Tax Act which is called Rule 30 in bracket 3, which says that if there is TDS that you pay on salaries and some other miscellaneous heads, commissions and so on and so forth. If there is TDS, let's say, because payrolls has the maximum number of TDS, maximum amount of TDS, if you're eligible to pay TDS on a monthly basis, under such special circumstances, you could approach the tax officer and request payment of TDS from a monthly to a quarterly basis. You can ask the tax officer that, look, we have collected TDS on a monthly basis, but because of a special situation, we want to pay this TDS on a quarterly basis instead of a monthly basis. Now, what are these special situations? We don't know. Whether the tax officer will allow this or not, we don't know. What sort of questions and what sort of inquiries is the tax officer going to make? We don't know that either. But this is a provision which is open under the Income Tax Act. And today you are in a situation where any avenues possible, you would like to give it a shot. So this is something which you must consider. Not necessarily you have to test it, but this is something you must consider. And then obviously you have other factors, other avenues open. You could defer your advance tax payments. You could pursue your tax refunds, which have been outstanding for a long time. Today, if you were to approach the senior tax officers, the government is considering all your requests in a benevolent manner, in a favorable manner. So go and approach them, so on and so forth. Give me the next slide, please. Now, this is the last slide on the direct tax part, and this talks about some possible restructuring planning options where you could save cash. First and the foremost is considering an option. Imagine you are in a group and you have many entities in a group and they all operate as separate legal entities. Now, a lot of companies that we've been talking to, a lot of larger groups, middle-sized, medium-sized groups we've been talking to are anticipating that, let's say, 50% of their businesses will end up making losses, given the trends in the last couple of months. And on a going forward basis, the situation will not drastically improve. So what is the way out that you are able to utilize the losses that you will incur in some businesses in terms of your entire business? So at many places, what we are trying to test is a model where if you were to merge a business, an entire business, and when I say business, I mean different entities, through a court process, and try and avail or get into a situation where the losses available in one business are used by the other business, that is a situation which could be favorable to you. That is something that we are testing in a lot of places. Of course, there are economies of scale that will have to be seen, but this is something which is an open sort of tool of planning which companies are considering. Then there are issues in tax arbitrage. For example, with the withdrawal of dividend distribution tax, suddenly the company structure has become very attractive, even more because the taxes have gone down as low as 15% when you talk about manufacturing companies, new manufacturing companies. So what sort of structures do you want? Do you still want to remain an LLP, or you want to convert into a company? Something that you have to examine. PE residency is more about foreign companies. This may not be discussed and may not be very relevant to this whole group. Coming on to transfer pricing. Now, a lot of you may be dealing with your headquarters or a lot of foreign partners, technology partners, and a lot of you may be facing transfer pricing issues. Now, given that this COVID situation has, shaken up the entire economy, it has shaken up the entire supply chain, your procurement, your marketing, your sales, your intangibles, anything and everything has undergone a change. The entire business assumptions have changed. All of our clients where we deal with, which have related party transactions, are relooking at their transfer pricing approach, which obviously is going to result into lowering your operating margins and comparing it with just the right comparables. Obviously, when you do that, you end up saving a lot of taxes should you were to make profits. So friends, these are a few issues which I thought were relevant to this group. Very happy and very open to any questions that you have. Ira, back to you now.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Arora. Very useful insights on the I mean, entire gamut, what has happened, what are the options available. So very useful insights for the participant. I think now maybe we can, there are some queries in the chat box, and maybe we can go by those queries, and after those queries are answered, maybe then we can ask for further question if any of the queries are left. So there are some queries in the chat box. I think Mr. Himanshu Srivastava and Mr. Sundeep Gupta, I would request them also. So we can go order wise and answer the specific queries.
Okay. So, thanks, Hira. Wherever possible, I have given pointers to the people who have raised the queries individually, but then for the sake of common group, because they might be similar concern with others. So, there was a query regarding MSME definition, whether this is for the time being or it's going to be there now going forward. So the answer is that, of course, as of now, this has already been announced, and this new definition will continue unless amended. So it has not been updated on the MSME's ministry's website, but then you can trust your finance minister that this new definition will now be the standard definition for MSME. So that's the answer for one. Then someone had a query on please focus support issues in power distribution utilities. For Mr. Sinha had this query. So I'm not fully sure as to what is the entire thing, but then I can only say that the whole issue is that the government has announced, liquidation injection of about 90,000 crores into the power distribution company. So this injection, which I understand will be done by PFC, which is Power Finance Corporation, and REC, which is Rural Electrification Corporation, into the DISCOM, and there will be two installments. This is definitely, going to ease out liquidity stress in DISCOMs, as they will be able to pay their dues to the transmission and generation companies. Further, the generating companies will give some rebate to distribution company, provided they also give some benefit to the customer. So there's going to be, as mentioned, the economic stimulus, it's going to be, some kind of direct benefit transfer related, in the electricity sector, as well as there's some benefit for independent power producer also. If there is anything specific which is bothering the audience or any specific query, I would not speak too much and would respond to that individually. I have already given my email address. If any other speaker want to add, please do. And then there was some query as to how these loans will be disbursed, about credit guarantee, or what are the procedures for, let's say, equity infusion, which this funds of fund has been talking about. I think Ms. Rudhi had this query. So I have already, mentioned to her that these, loan issues, primarily, of course, this has been announced by the government, but even then, first of all, it's for the existing, the relief is for the stressed MSME, and that too, every bank would have their own KYC norms and, norms to evaluate. But then definitely under the new package, bank also have their targets to meet. So they certainly would give relaxation to certain MSME if there are some, some, I would not say technical discrepancy, because ultimately they are responsible. But then they would be a specific budget with the banks to allocate funds to these MSMEs, subject to meeting the KYC criteria, which I don't think any bank would compromise. So it would all depend again bank to bank. I would assume, public sector banks be much more forthcoming as compared to the private banks here. And then there was a query on I think this one is for Sandeep. If sale of electricity is brought under GST, if Sandeep want to add on to it.
Yeah, okay. Before that, we had one question. I think that was on a one-to-one basis privately with me. So this was All India Spices Exporters Forum. So they were asking, they were scheduled to have a conference in March 2020, which obviously got postponed due to the lockdown situation, and they are planning to have it probably now early next year. So in case the participants who had already paid the advance, will they be, if they ask for a refund, will this forum, the exporters forum, be entitled to a refund? So I've just written to them. There was a circular 137/7/2020, which was, I think, dated 13th of April 2020, that specifically covers the kind of situations. It lays down certain conditions. It also talks about refund situations where advances have been received and subsequently the contracts got cancelled. The contract can be of goods and services. So on a conceptual plane, yes, refund can be allowed to you, but the specific situation and documentation and the cancellation of those contracts will need to be properly, sort of linked to ensure the refunds go through smoothly. That's I had written to the gentleman also accordingly, that based on these, principally, yes, details specific would then be determined whether it would be done or not. And then, as Himanshu said, Rudy is asking, if the sale of electricity is brought under GST, do the power price come down? Any thoughts? Well, yes, again, on a conceptual plane, the entire purpose of GST was to bring down the inflation, because it was supposedly to allow seamless flow of credit from the entire value chain from the start till the finish. So the end consumers were supposed to get the lowest possible prices, considering, of course, the economic situation, the realities of the market forces. So in case the government decides to bring electricity under the GST net, which could be potentially very difficult because it's a state subject and not a central subject. So yes, the power prices could come down. I have something on the stimulus loans. There is one on the interest payable on late payment of GST. So this I have already responded. The amendment has been made with retrospective effect. So in case you are paying anything for 18-19 through the annual return DRC 03 form, technically you are not supposed to pay interest on if the entire tax, the incremental tax liability is paid through the accumulated ITC. Even the DRC 03 permits you to set off the incremental tax liability against input tax credit and does not force you to pay cash tax there. But that notification is yet to be made applicable. So, there is always a debate. But to my mind, you will hold a very, very fair chance of, in case any inquiries come in, I would not recommend paying any interest as of now. The second question from the same person, Nilesh Solanki ji, is that the labor contractor is charging GST on the total amount, wages plus a service charge. Yes, this has been, since the service tax era, this has been a big problem in terms of the tax component. So what normally happens, where you employ labor through a contractor, the contractor will bill you not only for the wages component, but also for his service charges. So there the total invoice value goes up tremendously because of the number of the labor or the total wages involved. Unfortunately, as the law stands today, the GST would be applicable on the entire invoice value, which is a transaction value. But in case the contractor is able to justify, and that will require a lot of documentation and contractual phrasing, that the wages are paid in as a pure agent. Now, this is a technical term I'm using here, that if the contractor is only paying wages as a pure agent, then the GST would be levied only on his service charges. But it has a lot of red flags when this method is routed to, because it will also involve Provident Fund, it will also involve ESI, it will also involve the contractual arrangements with the individual labor, and a lot of documentation will need to be done for that. So this is a complicated issue. As of now, from the way the contractor normally bills, GST would be levied at the entire value. Then there are certain things on Himanshu's side. So Himanshu, if you can take over from Manish ji and Satya ji and one other question earlier.
I think yes, I think Mr. Manish is asking, would the entities still get benefits that are still registered under MSME? So yes, all existing as well as new MSME, because now many companies who are not otherwise registered can also register. So they will be entitled to the benefits under the MSME. And I hope that meets the, is enough response. And then there is Mr. Somani who's asking on the 10% PF rate taxation to improve the liquidity in the hands of employer will make 10% contribution. Does it mean employee will have an impact of 2% employer's contribution share? I think Sunil would want to add, in terms of taxation issue here. Sunil?
So this is, I think, not much to add, Manchu, on the tax side, because up to 12%, there have been very clear exemptions under the income tax law. So I don't think there is any straight connect there.
No, I'm coming more from whether, because I've read that if the norms are changed to 10%, answer number one is of course employer, if the percentage has been reduced to 10%, then of course they will only contribute 10% and 10% will be contributed by employees. So, but in somewhere I was, and probably this is the intention of by defining the word impact, is that if the employer continues to do 12% instead of 10%, so should this 2% will be impacting the taxability, and for this period may not be able to kind of be qualified as a tax exemption amount. So from that perspective,
possibly yes, that it may be the right way to take, but there is absolutely no clarity on that part.
Sure. I hope that really meets the objective of the question. If there is, I think
yeah, there is something on the inverted duty structure and the refund complication from, again, Nilesh ji. So I'll take that one. Yes, Nilesh ji, this is a problem being faced by a few sectors. Yes. Unfortunately, as the law and the rules which were made out, it does not provide for any refund of the capex or of the input services. It only allows you to apply for a refund based on the inputs directly used in the manufacturing or the trading process against the output supply. Representations have gone, but till now the government has not paid heed, and probably the reason behind it is that the intention of the refund has always been for promoting exports in whatever category, and the inverted duty was a very strange animal, a very strange phenomenon under the tax laws, where the output product was subjected to a lower tax rate as compared to the tax rate on the input products. So they have, and this continues from the service tax regime as well. So they have linked it only to inputs against the outputs, and they say that the tax paid on capex and on services will necessarily be into your pricing mechanism and will be a cost to you. But yes, FICCI can think of sending a representation in this regard, pushing it specifically for the sectors where the inverted tax rate still continues to apply. And then there is a second question, which is, I would say, a bigger issue to deal with, is a cross-charge concept, including the valuation. So now this was a very strange concept brought in the GST. This was not there in the service tax regime. And this cross-charge basically said was necessitated because of the decentralized registration processes between the states. So this said that if there are any services which are being rendered by one establishment of the same company to another establishment of the same company in a different state, it needs to be on an arm's length basis, and there are certain valuation procedures to apply. What the law omitted to say, and maybe with an intention, as to what would comprise a service and what would not comprise a service. In case of goods, the concept has always been very clear. So movement of goods, even in the VAT regime, from one warehouse in Delhi to another warehouse in Gurgaon was taxed. Of course, there was the Form F for interbranch movement of goods and all that. In GST, it's supposed to be a seamless movement of credit, so it's only a cash flow timing difference which applies. But the complication is on services front, and this essentially reared its head with the ruling of the Columbia Asia Hospital way back in 2018, when it was ruled that even the salaries of the CXO level people will need to be cross-charged, because the CEOs, CFOs, CHROs, they are all supposed to be rendering services to various registrations across the country of the same company, and they cannot be treated to be only giving services to the head office registration. The matter is still under litigation. There is no clear-cut stance taken by the government as of now. I can only tell you that even industry is divided into this. The one view, which is a very common view, which is being taken, is that any third-party services which are taken at a centralized level, let's say IT support services or accountancy services or auditing services, these are to be cross-charged based on the market value to all the registrations across India. But as far as the employee costs are concerned, it continues to be a debate. Some companies are following it, they are doing a cross charge, but most of the companies we deal with, they are not doing this. So you will have to take a call based on your area where you lie, based on the exposure involved in this, and then probably, you know, some kind of a pragmatic decision making could be done here.
There's one question from Ira, if I may address this one. There's one question from Vasundhara Khimka regarding, she says the stimulus package is more about loans. Is there any other benefit for cost plus service unit? I think the first observation is absolutely right. It's more about loans, and there is no specific relaxation that is available for cost plus service units. And I believe these are captive units that she is referring to. But I think my view here will be that this perhaps is the best time for any captive unit, any cost plus captive unit, to relook at their internal transfer pricing. Now, whether it's an international pricing or it's a domestic pricing, this is the best time for you to reevaluate, rework, reboot your internal transfer pricing, as I said, domestic, international, and revise your margins. So what essentially happens is that a lot of clients that we are advising, and these are primarily international clients, and in most of the cases, the comparable margins, which were ranging between cost plus, let's say, 15 to 20 or even 22 in some cases, have gone down drastically. They've gone down to cost plus 8, cost plus 10, cost plus 12, again, case to case basis. But I see this as a great opportunity.
So I think there was one question, although I have, written the response, but then I would, for the sake of, I think Manish ji has written this, that government will still be considering stimulus package for tourism sector in near future. So before Corona happened, the government had already, considered this, and I included it in my slides on champion sectors. But whether or not there would be a dedicated fund for reviving tourism, I'm not sure about this, not been addressed. But since this was already taken up and 5,000 crore has been allocated to 12 service sectors, including tourism, I think that should take care of the issues there. And then industry cluster upgradation, bit of elaboration on it. So see, in my view, there are, as I mentioned, more than 3,000 industry, industrial zone, and there are industry clusters. So industry clusters are primarily, defined based on, let's say, supporting infrastructure around it. So you will have an auto cluster in Pune, where there are a lot of automobile producer and kind of, support system available. So government is thinking that these clusters, if whatever deficiency they may have individually, state governments and respective industry ministry would look into it, and they would try to provide some support to fulfill that deficiency, so that the cluster is kind of Atmanirbhar, as well as can be upgraded and facilities could be improved. So I think this, in my view, industry cluster upgradation would help to create support system and create conducive atmosphere, including let's say infrastructure development, or in terms of policy intervention, to ensure that clusters can be created in various let's say various areas, and not just for automobile, but for, let's say, pharma, for maybe defense, clusters for defense. So these kind of clusters would be created and upgraded. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Srivastava. Are there any further queries maybe which one would like to ask? I think all the queries, I believe, which were there in the chat box have been answered. So with this, we would close the session, and someone has mentioned regarding the PPT. So definitely we would be sharing the PPT. And thank you to all the experts from ASA and Associates LLP. Thank you for joining us today. That was indeed very useful presentation, and on where we are, maybe what are the further issues, what are the opportunities, and I think you all have been able to definitely answer the queries of the participants. And I would also like to thank all the participants who took their time, and I believe you would have benefited from the discussions. In fact, if there are, we will also go through the queries which are there in the chat box. So from FICCI side also, there are some of the issues regarding like on the cross charge, where we have already represented. We are aware of the issues on the accumulated credit for input services. So we will also deliberate amongst the tax committee members, and then and also on the other issues. And we would endeavor that we are able to further take it up with the government, like apart from the queries which have been answered, if there is any representation which needs to be sent from our side, we'll take up those issues. And if there are any further queries which you feel you would need an answer on, you can definitely mail it to us, and we will try to maybe get answers on those, and also take up those issues appropriately with the government. So with this, I would again like to thank you, each one of you. Thank you, speakers. Thank you, Mr. Himanshu Srivastava. Thank you, Mr. Sandeep Gupta, Mr. Sumit Arora. Thank you very much for your time. So we end the webinar today, and we will be coming up. I think we should be coming up with more discussions like this, and we look forward to your feedback and further interactions. Stay safe, all of you. Stay positive and stay connected. All right. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.